now let's do the Proto rail. And we're going to start off the Proto rail video by saying this is not an SLG, okay? This is not a remade SLG. This is not the 2011 SLG. This gun has nothing to do with the SLG whatsoever, okay? Dye has discontinued the SLG, and people that have had it realize, if you had one that worked, it worked really, really well. If you had one that didn't, it didn't really work so well. The one I reviewed worked great, and my friend that has it, it's still working great, but there's a lot of other people that have problems with them, okay? The new rail is not the SLG. There's nothing inside of the new $300 Proto rail that has anything in common really with the SLG, okay? The gist of the rail, it actually more operates kind of like almost like, maybe dare I say, like a Vibe Blackheart, or a kind of a smaller, more inexpensive previous rail. It says rail on the box, and this is basically a PMR, an inexpensive PMR. It has nothing to do with the SLG whatsoever, other than the fact that it's priced about where the SLG was at. It operates completely different, uses an air solenoid, not a clapper. It's completely different than the SLG. This is not an SLG. I gotta say that off the bat. This is not an SLG. Does not operate like an SLG. It's completely different than the SLG. Whew. Okay. I had to say that because, since I've gotten this gun back from World Cup, I've had a lot of comments and questions, stuff like that. Why did they rename the SLG the rail? It is not an SLG. Okay. With that being said, let's take it out of the box. And Dye's got really good packaging with this. You get some extra O-rings with, as you can see, these O-rings are colored. And if you guys don't know, how do they get these colored O-rings? Like I said in the past, it's a guy named Chris Williamson that works at Dye. Does a great job. He sits in the back with a little Sharp, and he actually colors all of these by hand. It's really nice. He does a great job of it too. And you got a barrel sock, and you also get the new Dye Slick Lube, which is not the same Slick Lube that they had in the past. The Slick Lube in the past kind of looked like blue jelly. This stuff is white, and it works really well. So, now we got it out of the box. Now, let's address something that I've noticed has been kind of a little bit of concern. The stainless steel braided line. Okay, the stainless steel braided line, like most people when they see it, like, oh, it works with CO2. No, this gun does not work with CO2. It is designed to work with high pressure air. Now, why would they go with stainless steel braided line? Because for most paintball players that are brand new to paintball, they don't understand how macro line works, okay? I've seen it many, many times at the fields. People that are brand new to paintball, they don't quite understand how macro line works. They don't understand about blue Loctite. They don't really understand about fittings. They don't understand how important it is to have a perfect, clean cut. They take themselves a piece of macro line. They're like, what am I gonna cut this with? Let me use a saw. They hit it with a saw. Then they shove it into their gun. And then they go to use it, it starts leaking, and it's like, oh, the gun's broken. The gun's broken, okay? That's why they went with stainless steel line, because it doesn't leak, okay? And they can test it at the factory. Don't worry about somebody pulling it out, getting it dirty, sticking it back in. Stainless steel braided lines hardly ever leak. So, and they work really, really well, and they pretty much, unless you mess with them or whatever, you don't put them in properly, they pretty much last forever. So, it's true, you can see with the automags where they have like the coily, a stainless steel braided line for the CO2, and those haven't leaked in 20 years. Pretty much the same thing with this one. So if you buy the rail and you want to put macro line on here, very inexpensive. Go to my favorite website to get macro line stuff, which is macrolineguy.com. You can buy yourself 2 fittings. I would probably recommend getting the non-swivel 90 degree and then getting the straight, and then get yourself a fresh piece of macro line. Make sure you make a nice clean cut. Put it on there using blue Loctite when you screw it into the ASA and also the into the regulator. Use blue Loctite. Put it all together and you should be pretty good. So that's that. Just want to address that because I see a lot of people, the stainless steel hose turned a lot of people off. I don't know why. Yeah, you'll maybe save an ounce going to the macro line, but in your hands when you're out there on the field, it's not going to affect your performance whatsoever. Okay, if anything, it may be a godsend. You never have to worry about this popping out. You never have to worry about it leaking, this, that, and the other. Hyper 3 regulator, basically the same thing that they put on the NT, just like they put on the DM11. One of the top regulators, one of the best regulators in the industry. And obviously, you're going to see on the rail, there's a nut up here at the very top. Basically what that is for is basically just for indexing for the regulator to make sure that the hose comes out perfectly so the hose doesn't come out the side or anything. These hoses are trimmed to fit perfectly on the rail, and you'll notice that at the top of the on the top of the Hyper 3 regulator there is a nut there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get in a little bit closer. We're going to take it apart, and then we're going to go outside and do an efficiency test and then come back for the conclusion. Okay, now let's get started with doing some basic maintenance on the rail. So I'd bring the scale over here. Okay, turns on. Let's see where we're at here. Pretty light gun. 1 pound, 14.4 ounces. 1 pound, 14.4 ounces. And now let's go ahead and take it apart. Now the first thing let's take apart or remove is the eye pipe. Now what's really cool is the rail, they're basically giving you the same technology that they put into the that they're putting into the NT and the DM11 with the eye pipe. Best part about the eye pipe is it completely blocks your eyes from getting any sort of paint in it. Any of the paint is going to accumulate in and around the eye pipe here, and basically it's one less thing to have to worry about cleaning out your eyes or your eye sockets and stuff like that. That's the eye pipe. Now at the bottom of the eye pipe there is a plastic indexer that you can use to slide it back into the breech. So you just have to wiggle it around a little bit. I typically just put it around my finger. And then push it all the way back and you're good to go. Now basically what it does is the barrel holds the eye pipe in place. So in order to pull the eye pipe out, you need to remove the barrel. Now Dye, obviously learning from the mistakes in the past, they went now to a aluminum back cap. I don't know if you remember, like, what is it, 2008 rails with the plastic back cap? Not a smart decision. So they now have gone to an aluminum back cap, which makes me really happy because it's not anything you have to worry about replacing or anything like that. You don't have to worry about stripping this out. See, companies know we're on to them. We're not going to let we're going to get away with no plastic cap. I remove the then push the bolt out. There we go. Okay, so we've got the bolt here. Let's go ahead and remove the front O-ring. There we go. And as you can see, very strikingly similar to many other guns that have used this type of unbalanced spool valve design. Probably one of the biggest things here is up here at the very front. You'll see a heavy-duty bumper that's on the front of the bolt here. I mean, I can't imagine that ever wearing out, but that's a real nice heavy-duty bumper on the front of it. But this is basically nothing, nothing different that you haven't seen in many other guns in the past. There's no sear here, so this is not an SLG. As you can see here, there's nothing for the sear to catch. This is all air-driven. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of lube. And the best part about this, if you keep your gun clean, you can definitely pretty much use any one of your favorite lubes. There's so many of them that are out there. The Dye lube that actually comes in the box works great. And I know quite a few of Dye sponsored pro teams, they use that lube and they have no problems whatsoever, but people are generally pretty particular about their lubes. And let's go ahead and put this all back together again. There we go. Make sure you put some lube on the outside of these O-rings. Wiggle it back and forth. Okay, now the Hyper 3, no different than any Hyper 3s that you've seen me take apart in the past. Very simple. You just have to undo the ASA right here, slide down this collar, grasp it from the middle, top the pop cap, remove the top cap here, and out comes your piston. Very, very simple. I've got a Hyper 3 maintenance video out there, and this is very, very simple to take apart the Hyper 3. And I believe that's going to be most of the parts here that you're going to have to take apart and maintain. Now I will tell you this, obviously this has a plastic feed neck. I'm not a fan of the plastic feed neck. It does hold on, and you know, there's not really any problems with this type of feed neck. But you don't have to purchase an entire feed neck if you want to buy, or if you want to go to a better style of clamping feed neck. You can simply remove this screw, pull that off, and you can see this is used. Sorry about that. You know, as I say, pardon our mess. But you can now, you know, with this, you can just basically take the die feed neck. You don't have to take the whole entire feed neck, just the outer part, which you can buy for a lot cheaper than the whole feed neck. So if you want to put on a clamping feed neck on here, you can just use this part and just get the outer shell from like a DMA, DM9 or something like that and snap it over the top, or you don't have to worry about trying to take this off. If you do want to take this off, we'll go ahead and talk about upgrades really quick. What I highly recommend you do is take a loader like a VL200, stick it down inside of the feed neck first, then grab the pliers and then pull it off. The VL200 on the inside here is going to prevent you from bending these tabs all the way in. It's going to make getting it off a lot easier. So now that we got this taken apart, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my mess here, and let's go ahead and take this out and do an efficiency test on it, and then we'll come back for the conclusion. All right, about to do the efficiency test on the rail. And you can see we're sitting at about 4,500 PSI, and let's go ahead and get the so it looks like we're sitting at about 93.5 degrees. Looks good to me. Looks like we're sitting right at about mid to upper 290s on the chronograph. Set that over here. Alright, so that's almost a full pod. So we got almost 7 pods. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up the rail, what I think of it. One thing I did notice about the rail is that it has a really high dwell time. I believe it operates somewhere around 40 milliseconds. You definitely feel that when you're out there on the field, especially if you're used to shooting poppet guns, which typically range anywhere from about the 8 to 12 milliseconds. You will notice a very slight lag from the time you pull the trigger to the time the ball comes out of the barrel. It's something that pretty much mostly experienced players are going to feel it. Inexperienced players aren't going to quite know the difference, but you definitely kind of feel that if you've been shooting paintball guns for a long time and you pick this up, you are going to feel just a slight lag from the time you pull the trigger to the time the ball comes out. The gun is really quiet, and probably the 40 milliseconds of dwell probably is what adds to that. I know that the guns are basically restricted on their rate of fire based on that high dwell and stuff like that to somewhere around 15, 16 balls per second. That's not really that big of a deal, okay? I know that when you go to a lower rate of fire like that, it makes the bolt move very slow, which is great because it won't break paint. So I didn't have any paint breaking issues with the gun when I was out there using it. It's very, very quiet gun out there in the woods and also playing out there on the airball field. Probably the recommended upgrades I would come out for it would be probably like a 14-inch barrel. Gonna make it a little easier to point than the 12-inch barrel. Take your pick of what your favorite one is. I would say go with the dust black. Maybe go with like a Custom Products. I know Furious Paintball also now makes, their barrels are also in dust black. That's a really nice barrel, a little bit more money. But the rail was a good shooter when it was out there. I mean, it's quiet, it's light, it's a little bit, heavy on air, but then again, most spool valve guns they're going to use a little bit more air. So this is not the gun that I would probably stick, a 45 on. I would at least be using a 68 4500 with this gun out there in the woods if you plan on shooting more than 3 or 4 pods, every time you go out there and play. But this is a good, definitely a good effort by Dye. I really like this gun. I'm glad that, the SLG is gone, and in the past, I think this is a better bang for the buck for 300 bucks than the SLG was. Like I said, I mean, I kind of hate to compare it to it because there's a lot more technology that goes into this gun, but if you need to compare it to something, it's more of like a Vibe Blackheart, just an extremely sexy and very well built Vibe Blackheart. It feels great in the hands. It's very lightweight. It's got the ultralight frame, basically almost the same board as the NT or the DM11, but this is a good shooting gun for $300. So, other than possibly, some upgrades of maybe a clamping feed neck and also maybe a slightly longer barrel is something that I would probably recommend. It just makes it a little easier to point, a little bit, especially if you're playing airball, it makes it a little easier to manipulate the bunkers and stuff like that. But, don't let the rate of fire scare you away from the gun. The fact that it has a lower rate of fire, it just means that the bolt's slower and it'll hardly ever break paint. So, I really like the rail, under 2 pounds, 300 bucks. This is a solid gun for $300. So I was definitely really excited to get one and shoot it and stuff like that. Composite frame, honestly, I know a lot of people may have a problem with the composite frame. In your hands, you would never know the difference. You're going to see a lot more gun companies going to composites. They're a lot cheaper to make, and also they don't bend. If you end up taking a really bad dive with this, it's just going to bend. It's going to bend a little bit and snap right back. It's not going to stay bent like it would with aluminum. But there's nothing wrong with composite frames whatsoever. I don't. It makes no difference to me whether the marker has a composite frame or not. Composite frames are on, firearms all over the U.S. and you don't hear anybody else complaining. So, metal back cap, which I really, really like. I did notice that the gun, if you shot it too much, once you hit about 3 or 4 cases, if you didn't lube the marker, you could definitely notice a drop in the velocity. So this marker does like having lube in it. It's definitely a marker you want to lube often after every single time you play. I kind of did a little experiment. I played with it for 2 weekends straight and didn't lube it just to see what it did. I put about 4 cases through it, and I noticed that my velocity was dropping, and as I started increasing the pressure to compensate for it, I started getting the bleed off from the regulator, and lubing it took care of it. So definitely want to make sure when you pick up the rail that you lube it often. Use a good quality lube like the Dye lube and stuff like that. You shouldn't have any problems with it. But it's a good shooting gun. Definitely no problems with a good shooting gun. I will also say, if you are going to be going to macrolineguy.com and purchasing your macro line and your fittings, and also you need to get some blue Loctite to plumb it, I would also recommend getting yourself some tri-flow so that you can put it into the ASA here. It's going to make it a lot easier for screwing your tank in and out. But I think Dye Proto did a great job with the rail. Definitely a really nice gun. Use a little bit of air, but it's very gentle on paint, very quiet, very lightweight, and works great out there on the paintball field. Thanks for tuning in.